Hello, and welcome back to another reading in Transcendental Literature. Today we're starting to read the Madhuraya Kadambini, one of my personal favorites. This book is great. Really explains what it does. It explains all the details from faith to devotee association to engagement in devotional service to the unwanted things in the heart going away, the whole process to them becoming steady in transcendence, to developing attachment for Krishna, to developing love for Krishna. And it describes all the minute details that one will naturally experience and the obstacles one will come across and how one will overcome those obstacles. All the details are described in this book, so it's very, very inspiring, because when you read it, you feel like, wow, achieving the topmost platform of spiritual life is doable. You feel like it's totally possible. So it's an exciting book to read. It's by one of the acharyas, by Srila Vishvanatha Cakravarti Thakura. I can't remember whose he was. I'll have to look in the disciplic succession. He was either the spiritual master of Narottam Das Thakur, or he was the disciple of Narottam Das Thakur, something like that. So, at any rate, sorry I'm so late today. Maybe this is a better time after all. Instead of 6:30, 7:30 would be better. You can let me know if the timing is working out, not working out for you in the comments. That'd be great. So today is we're going to just skip the introduction and skip all that stuff so we can just get into the book. The first shower nectar, and this one is very, very interesting. The chapter is entitled "The First Shower of Nectar," but then the subtitle is "Super Excellence of Bhakti," and the detail is stunning. The detail is stunning. How clear he can point out that bhakti is super excellent. And I think above all things he makes a very compelling and perfectly clear case about how bhakti is completely independent, and how it's even independent of Krishna, because bhakti is transcendental. Anyway, all these points, all the points that you would never raise yourself, that are seemingly contradictions that someone would raise, Vishvanatha Cakravarti Thakura, he raises all these contradicting points because he's assuming he's speaking to a highly intelligent audience, which of course he is. So we need that. We need all those details to be fully satisfied, and our intellects to be fully satisfied. So let's see here. So without further ado, I'll just begin to read here, Madhuraya Kadambini. It's a pretty short book, as you can see, so this is not going to be more than a couple days, I would imagine. So Madhuraya Kadambini, first shower of nectar, super excellence of bhakti, and this is the Mangalacharana. And just like I've always done, I'm not really going to get into reading the Sanskrit. Maybe if there's a verse that I know, I'll read it. And there'll be a lot of Sanskrit not quoted in verses, but just Sanskrit words that are dumped in the paragraphs. So I'll probably read those, but reading a bunch of Sanskrit I'll probably avoid for the purposes of just getting the flow of the information. So let me read here. Mangalacharana. The mercy of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an uncontrollable cloud bank of exquisitely sweet nectar, which fully rejuvenates the grains of ninefold bhakti in the field of the heart, extinguishes the scorching summer heat of lust by its sudden appearance, and bestows rapture to the universal river of living beings. From far off, may those clouds of the Lord's mercy give satisfaction and pleasure even to this worthless soul, a dried-up tree in the desert. These are quotes from Sanskrit verses written by Srila Vishvanatha Cakravarti Thakura. So the next verse is, through previous Mahajans, Prahlada, Dhruva, Kumaras, Though previous Mahajans, Prahlada, Dhruva Kumars, have taken up the path of bhakti, now, by the mercy of Srila Rupa Goswami, one attains the intelligence to see bhakti in its complete rasa form. I constantly pay my obeisances to him who is very dear to the Lord. Okay, so now he writes, we will proceed on the basis of scriptural evidence, Shabda Pramana, the best of all evidences. Thus the Shruti states in the Taittiriya Upanishad, after discussing the different coverings, Annamaya, Pranamaya, that Brahman, Anandamaya, is the shelter or support of these coverings. Brahman Pucham Pratishtha. When it emphatically declares that the Praman Anandamaya Purusha is superior even to Brahman as Parat Paratattva, or most supreme truth, who is the embodiment of rasa, or pleasure. Rasovai sa rasang hivayam labdavanandi bhavanti. The Lord is rasa itself, and attaining that rasa, the jiva becomes blissful. In this vein, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the cream of Vedanta, an emperor among all evidences, describes Lord Krishna as the full embodiment of rasa, or mellow. So he quotes a verse here. Read the English. The various groups of people in the wrestling arena regarded Krishna in different ways when he entered it with his elder brother. Hold on, sorry. Okay, the wrestlers saw Krishna as a lightning bolt, the ordinary men as the best of men, the women as Cupid incarnate, the cowherdmen as their relative, the impious rulers as a chastiser, his parents as their child, the king of Bhoja as death, the ignorant as the universal form, the yogis as the absolute truth, and the Vrishnis as their supreme worshipable deity. This is the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 43, text number 17. In the Bhagavad Gita 14:27 as well, Krishna himself asserts his identity above Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the basis of Brahman. Thus, all these evidences conclude that the absolute truth is Sri Vrajaraj Nandana, Krishna, the son of the king of Vraj, the eternal figure possessed of his own spiritual names, forms, qualities, pastimes, and so on. He can only be perceived by the ear, eye, mind, and intellect of men by his independent will, and not by any material cause, as by his own sweet will he appeared in the Yadu and Raghu dynasties as Krishna and Rama. Like the Lord, his non-different internal potency bhakti is self-manifesting and independent of any material cause. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains, Yato bhaktir adoksaje ahetukiya pratiyata. Devotional service to the transcendent Lord is causeless and uninterrupted. That's the first canto, second chapter, text number 6. Sorry, this cord is getting in my way. Okay, so here the word ahaituki, causeless, means that devotional service has no material cause, hetu. The Lord also says, Yadrichaya mat kadado. Quote, if somehow or other a person becomes attached to hearing about me, madbhaktim yadrichaya, quote, somehow he attains my devotional service, and bhakti increases in its own way. Thus the word yadrichaya must mean by its own independent sweet will. In the dictionary also, the meaning of yaricha is self-willed independence. Some people take the word to mean by good fortune. That meaning is unsuitable here, for then one must inquire about the cause of the good fortune. Do material pious activities cause good fortune, or is it independent of pious action? If one assumes that bhakti comes from the good fortune caused by pious activities, this means bhakti is dependent on material karma, but this is against its self-manifesting nature. Again, if one thinks that good fortune is not due to pious activities, then its cause is beyond words and unknown. Thus, being inconclusive, how can good fortune describe the cause of bhakti? If one proposes that the cause of bhakti is the Lord's mercy, then one must find the cause of that mercy. Again, this statement in need of further explanation is inconclusive. One may further refine this statement by saying, the cause of bhakti is the Lord's unqualified mercy. If this mercy is causeless, however, one should observe the Lord giving bhakti equally everywhere. Since this is not seen, it would then imply the fault of partiality on the part of the Lord. Thus, the causeless mercy of the Lord is also unacceptable as the cause of bhakti. That blows my mind. I hope it blows your mind. So someone may question that the Lord punishes the demoniac and protects his devotees. Is this not partiality? But this partiality the Lord shows towards his devotees is not a fault in the Lord, but rather an ornament that enhances his nature. The Lord's affection for his devotees, Bhakta-vatsalya, is the all-powerful king who conquers over all the Lord's qualities and reconciles all contradictions. Excuse me, sorry. This will be fully discussed in the 8th shower. Proposing the unqualified mercy of the devotee as the cause of devotion is in another person. One may object that the devotee's mercy, like the Lord's, can be partial. Considering the Madhyama Bhakta, one finds he does not show partiality or discretion in distributing mercy. But the Bhagavatam accepts this partiality as a natural trait of the Madhyama Bhakta. He exhibits prema towards the Lord, friendship to the devotees, mercy to the innocent, and disregard for those hostile to bhakti. That's from the Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 46. The Lord, being subservient to his devotee, svabhakta vashata, lets his mercy follow the mercy of his devotee. Thus this proposal is not at all irregular. But even accepting the devotee's mercy as the cause of bhakti, still, the cause of that mercy is bhakti itself residing within his heart. Without the devotee having bhakti, there is no possibility of him giving mercy to others. Bhakti causes the devotee's mercy, which causes bhakti in another person. Bhakti causes bhakti. The self-manifesting, independent nature of bhakti is thus concluded. Pretty sweet. There's a statement, quote, the person who attains faith in the service of the Lord by extreme good fortune, ... unquote. But here one should understand the meaning of the word extreme good fortune as attaining the mercy of the devotee, which surpasses the fortune due to pious works. One shouldn't consider it impossible for the devotee to bestow mercy first without awaiting the order of the Lord. Accepting subservience to his devotee, the Lord grants him the power to bestow the Lord's own mercy, giving preeminence to the devotee. Although the Lord as Paramatma oversees the affairs of the jiva's external senses, the result of his past activities, he gives special mercy to his devotees. As in the Bhagavad Gita 1862 and 615, Krishna himself speaks of his prasada, or mercy, as the means to attain supreme peace in his eternal abode. This prasad takes the form
of the Lord's giving his devotee the power to confer the Lord's own Kripa Shakti, or mercy. In other words, one receives the Lord's mercy through the mercy of the devotee who bestows it, as was previously explained. Previously explained. Krishna himself speaks of his prasad, or mercy, as the means to attain supreme peace in his eternal abode. This prasad takes the form of the Lord giving his devotee the power to confer the Lord's own Kripa Shakti, or mercy. This must be a repeat of the previous paragraph. In other words, one receives the Lord's mercy through the mercy of the devotee who bestows it, as was previously explained. It is indeed a repeat of the last. Anyway, good to hear it twice. Okay, continuing. By hundreds of scriptural quotations such as Svaichavatara Chariter, quote, the Lord appears and acts by his supreme will, Canto 4, text, chapter 8, text 57, and, quote, by his supreme will, it is accepted that the Lord appears by his own will. Still, by ordinary vision, one may say, relieving the burden of evil on the earth, establishing religious principles, and so on, are the cause of the Lord's advent. In the same way, sometimes it is said prescribed duties done without personal motives, naiskama karma, and other pious works act as the door to bhakti. There is no harm in such statements, but Srimad Bhagavatam says, quote, even though one engages with great endeavor in the mystic yoga system, philosophical speculation, charity, vows, penances, ritualistic sacrifices, teaching Vedic mantras to others, personal study of the Vedas, or the renounced order of life, still one cannot achieve me. That's Canto 11, chapter 12, text 9. Unquote. Despite charity, austerities, and other pious works being clearly denied as actual causes of bhakti, in another place, Bhagavatam says, quote, devotional service unto Lord Krishna is attained by charity, strict vows, austerities, fire sacrifices, japa, study of Vedic texts, observance of regulative principles, and, indeed, the performance of many other auspicious practices. 10th Canto, chapter 47, text 24. This statement, however, refers to bhakti in the material mode of goodness, which acts as a limb of the system of jnana, rather than the transcendental, fully spiritual bhakti as a limb of prema. Of course, some people say charity means giving to Vishnu and the Vaishnavas. Vrata, or austerity, means vratas such as Ekadashi, and tapas meaning renouncing sense pleasure to attain the Lord. Thus they are all angas, or limbs, of the sadhana bhakti. To say one attains bhakti by these angas is not wrong, for this simply means that sadhana bhakti causes sadhya bhakti, perfected bhakti. Bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya. Thus, the causeless nature of bhakti is again concluded, and all contradictory points are settled. Quote, my dear Lord, devotional service unto you is the unrivaled path for self-realization. If someone gives up that path and engages in the cultivation of speculative knowledge, he will simply undergo a troublesome process and will not achieve his desired result. As a person who beats an empty husk of rice cannot get grain, one who simply speculates cannot achieve self-realization. His only gain is trouble. Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 14th chapter, text number 4. And another verse, quote, one who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in dharma, does not gain anything. 1.5.17 of the Bhagavatam. Another verse here, quote, O Almighty Lord, in the past many yogis in this world achieved the platform of devotional service only after offering all their endeavors unto you. Through such devotional service, perfected by the process of hearing and chanting about you, they came to understand you. O Infallible One. and could easily surrender to you and achieve your supreme abode. 10.14.5, unquote. These verses confirm that the paths of jnana, karma, and yoga are completely dependent on bhakti to achieve their results. The path of bhakti, however, is never dependent even in the slightest way on karma, jnana, or yoga to achieve its results. Prema. Prema being the result. Rather, the Lord declares, quote, "Thus for a devotee engaged in my loving service with mind fixed on me, jnana and vairagya are not generally beneficial to achieve perfection in this world." Another verse, quote, "He who gives up all paths and simply worships me is the best among men," unquote. These and so many other verses prove the complete independence of bhakti. What more can be said? Bhakti is essential to give results in the practice of karma, jnana, and yoga, but bhakti itself is not even the least contingent on these practices for its own result. The scriptures state, quote, "All that is accomplished by karma, tapas, jnana, vairagya, yoga, charity, and all other religious duties for perfecting life is easily attained by my devotee through devotional service alone. If somehow or other my devotee desires promotion to heaven, liberation, or residence in my abode, he easily attains such benedictions." 11th Canto of the Bhagavatam. So here's another verse, quote, "Without devotion to the Lord, good birth, knowledge of scripture, chanting mantras, and doing austerities are like decorating a dead body to please the common people." Haribhakta Sudadaya. Thus, without bhakti, all these endeavors are fruitless. As the body depends on the presence of the soul, the very life of jnana, karma, and yoga depend upon supremely exalted Bhakti Devi. Moreover, the dependence of karma, jnana, and yoga on conditions of purity in place, time, candidate, materials, and performance is famous in the Smriti scriptures. This is not true of bhakti. Quote, "O hunter, in chanting the names of the Lord there is no restriction concerning place, time, purity, and so on." Vishnu Dharma. In fact, it is famous for being completely independent. Quote, "O Bhriguvara, the name of Krishna, chanted even once, with either faith or contempt, can deliver any man." Wow, that's from Pradyavali 26 from the Padma Purana Prabhasa Kanda. Unquote. Bhakti is thus not dependent on purity of place, time, or even practice. One cannot say the same of karma yoga, where even the slightest fault is a great obstacle to progress. Quote, "If a mantra is intoned or pronounced incorrectly, not only will the mantra be ineffective, but it may act as a thunderbolt for the person for whose benefit the sacrifice is done. As when Tvashta wanted to create the enemy of Indra, he slightly mispronounced the words Indra Shatru in the yajna. Those words then worked as a thunderbolt for Vritrasura, who was killed by Indra." Unquote. So, story in the 6th canto. So the necessity of internal purity, purity of heart, for the practice of jnana yoga is well known. Purity of heart arises from practice of karma yoga without personal desire. Thus entrance into jnana yoga is even dependent on naiskama karma yoga. And if by accident one who practices jnana yoga commits even a small unworthy act, Shastra condemns him as a vantasi, or an eater of vomit. This is because to enter into jnana yoga you have to be a sannyasi, you have to renounce completely. There's no way you can actually truly genuinely practice jnana yoga without being a sannyasi. So that's what he's talking about. So if you fall down as a sannyasi, an unworthy act, vantasi. So when seen in this light, Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, and Ravana, though they were jnanis, have not even a speck of fame on this account because of their conduct. On the other hand, on the path of bhakti, though one may be afflicted by lust, one has the qualifications, adhikar, to begin the practice. Just by the practice of bhakti, lust and other impurities are destroyed. Quote, anyone who faithfully hears or chants about the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan, having attained the Lord's pure devotional service, he quickly becomes sober and conquers lust, the disease of the heart. 10th Canto, 33rd Chapter. So hereby the tense of the verb pratilabhya having obtained, it is clear that bhakti first manifests while there are still lusty desires in the heart. Then, after her manifestation, lusty desires are wiped out. This is due to bhakti being supremely independent. Furthermore, though such impurities as karma may sometimes appear in the devotee, the scriptures declare, Apichet su duracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak, sadur eva samantavya samyag vyavistito hisaha. Even if a person engaged in devotional service commits the most abominable act, sudurachara, he is still considered saintly. Bhagavatam 9:30. And, quote, my dear Uddhava, if my devotee has not fully conquered his senses, he may be harassed by material desires, but because of his unflinching devotion for me, he will not be defeated by sense gratification. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, unquote. From these evidences, it is clear that Shastra never condemns such devotees who have begun the path of bhakti, even though still affected by such faults as lust. The servants of Vishnu judged Ajamil as a devotee, even though Ajamil inadvertently uttered the name of the Lord merely out of affection for his son. Though the chanting of such persons as Ajamil is namabhasa, not pure, seen in the light of the scriptures, they are still universally praised as devotees. Thus it is evident that internal purity and purity of place, materials, and such are necessary for results of karma, jnana, and yoga. Their lack or any fault in the practitioner will obstruct progress on these paths. Moreover, karma, jnana, and yoga are dependent on bhakti in every way, as bhakti is the very giver of life to these paths. That which is independent is neither nurtured nor obstructed by anything else. Further, only ignorant people say bhakti is only a means of attaining jnana. The Shastras, however, strongly declare the super excellence of bhakti over even the final goal of jnana, moksha. Bhagavatam says, quote, the Lord easily gives liberation, but not bhakti. 5th Canto, Chapter 6, Text 18. And, quote, O great sage, among many millions of liberated persons and perfect jnanis, a devotee of Lord Narayan who is fully peaceful is extremely rare. Canto 6, Chapter 14, Text 5. The all-powerful Lord himself, by becoming Upendra, the younger brother of Indra, made Indra his superior, and then gave him full support. Highly learned souls have realized that this showed his unsurpassed mercy, rather than his inferior position. In the same way, if jnana sometimes appears to take a superior position to bhakti, it is only because bhakti is mercifully playing the role of its assistant. Bhakti, though transcendental and supremely independent, accepts the material modes of goodness, and becomes a limb of jnana to give support to jnana. This is the understanding of wise men. Bhaktya sajataya bhaktya. The fruit of sadhana bhakti is prema bhakti, itself the crown of all human ideals. Thus, the all-pervading, all-attractive, all-life-giving, super-excellent, supremely independent, and self-manifesting nature of the exalted energy Bhakti Devi, arising from the Lord himself, has been slightly described. If one still prefers a process other than bhakti, that person should be considered bereft of all sense. What else can be said? If one rejects the path of bhakti, the scriptures deem him not a human being. Quote, only a non-human would refuse to serve the Lord. Unquote. Thus ends the first shower of nectar of Madhuraya Kadambini by Srimad Vishvanatha Cakravarti Thakura, entitled Super Excellence of Bhakti. Jai. 30 minutes. Pretty good. Wow. Bhakti is independent, and bhakti is it's supremely beneficial because you can do it and you'll make progress on it, even if you do it imperfectly, even if you don't have all the right elements around you. It's just like, in all circumstances, just do something for Krishna and make progress. It's not dependent on anything. Nothing. That's what one should get out of that section, and it's completely independent. Absolutely independent. Fascinating. So then the next chapter, I'll read it because these two chapters are really not that long. This one's even shorter than the last. This is the second shower of nectar, and the subtitle is Steps of Bhakti from Sraddha to Sadhu-sanga to Bhajana Kriya and Divisions of Bhajana Kriya. So Sraddha is faith, Sadhu-sanga is associating with devotees, Bhajana Kriya is engagement in devotional service. So one thing to point out is that the first chapter was titled Super Excellence of Bhakti. So if one listens to that chapter, it should give you faith in devotional service, right? So he's walking you through he's going to walk us through all the different stages, and he even really starts before Sraddha by actually giving you Sraddha, by quoting the Bhagavatam, quoting all the verses in the Vedas. Vishvanatha Cakravarti Thakura is trying to plant a seed of bhakti in the heart of the listener. Of course, most of you who are listening more or less have a seed of bhakti in your heart already because you're practicing devotional service, but I think this would enhance that at the least. So, yes, this chapter, now it starts Sraddha, Sadhu-sanga, Bhajana Kriya, and divisions of Bhajana Kriya. This is really interesting stuff here. So let's read it. In this work, one will not find a dissertation or dualism. Find a dissertation on dualism and monism, but for those who expect it, they may find it in another work called Madhuraya Kadambini. So, pure bhakti unmixed with karma and jnana is like a wish-fulfilling creeper appearing in the field of the senses. This bhakti is the refuge of fortunate devotees who firmly vow never to seek any fruits except bhakti, like bees obsessed with the desire to taste only nectar. The very life of this creeper is service favorable to the transcendental pleasure of the Lord. Like a touchstone, the very presence of bhakti makes the heart and senses gradually lose their iron-like material qualities and acquire pure, golden spiritual qualities. The newly sprouted creeper of sadhana bhakti unfurls 2 leaves pointing upwards. The first is called kleshagni, relief from all kinds of material distress, and the second is called shubhada, beginning of all auspiciousness. The inner surface of the 2 leaves is the domain of the king called raga and is very smooth, the sign of being born out of spontaneous greed for everything pertaining to the Lord. There is a note here. I'll read it. As newly sprouted leaves are pointing upwards, their upper surfaces are facing each other, and thus inside, and their lower surfaces outside. That was the note. So I'll continue. Its superior nature is due to the devotee's pure, unalloyed affection for the Lord. So this is the smooth side. Excuse me, my ear kind of itched. The outer surface of the leaves, ruled by another king, is called Vaida, or Vaidhi Bhakti, is slightly rough, the sign of being generated from obedience to scriptural rules. It's somewhat inferior since spontaneous affection for the Lord is lacking, as the relation with the Lord is mixed with awe and veneration. So here's a quote. O Parikshit, thus one who desires to become fearless should hear about, glorify, and remember me as the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller, and the Savior from all miseries. Unquote. Canto 2, Chapter 1, text number 5. So both raga and vaidhi, however, almost equally manifest the symptoms of kleshagni, relief from all kinds of material distress, and shubhada, beginning of all auspiciousness. There are 5 types of klesha destroyed by bhakti: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Yeah, that's the last one. Klesha literally means suffering or affliction, but here it may be taken as the cause of suffering. They are described in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, 3rd sutra of the Sadhana-pada, which explains that these are actually 5 different kinds or causes of avidya, or ignorance. So these sufferings are actually causes of suffering, they're causes of ignorance. So from them arises the tendency to right or wrong action, causing religion or irreligion, and thus sinful and pious activities. According to the reaction of one's sinful or pious activity, one meets with fortune or misfortune. And this is all considered ignorance, right? Because true knowledge means to act on the spiritual platform. So, okay, here's word explanation for each item of the 5 types of ignorance. So, avidya, just ignorance. To make that which is impermanent to be permanent, that which is full of misery to be blissful, that which is impure to be pure, and that which is not the self to be the self. It's mistaking the self for the body, to mistake something that is spiritual to be material, or something that is material to be spiritual. That's ignorance, avidya. So, next one, asmita, false ego, the bodily identification of I and mine, and to accept only direct sense perception as real. So if you are ignorant, then you'll have false ego. Then the next one, raga, attachment, the desire to obtain material happiness and to decrease suffering. So if you have false ego, you're identifying with the self as the body, you'll be attached to the body's happiness and reject things that cause the body suffering. So you'll basically have attachment to the body, raga. And the next thing, dvesha, hatred, aversion to unhappiness or the causes of unhappiness. So those things that disturb your happiness based on your attachment, then you have hatred. Abhinivesha, instinctively clinging to bodily enjoyments and fear that death will cut one off from all these. So if things are causing you unhappiness and suffering, then you will cling to those things that cause you enjoyment and fight with those things that are causing you suffering. And ultimately, because you're attached to the body, because of ignorance, you will hate and be fearful of death, because death is guaranteed to take it all away from you. This is all rooted in ignorance. The idea that I am this body, and therefore I act accordingly. So according to that level of action, you'll have fear, you'll have attachment, you'll experience hatred, things like that. The 4 effects of sin, let's see here. Parabdha, mature; aparabdha, not yet fructified; rudha, or kuta, lying as seed; and bija, germinating seed, are also included in klesha. As both types of bhakti eradicate klesha, similarly, they both bestow subha, or auspiciousness. Srimad Bhagavatam confirms, quote, all the demigods and all their exalted qualities manifest in the person of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For one who is not a devotee, however, and thus driven by the temporary material desires of his mind, how can there be any good qualities in him? So this this exact point, if it's confusing at all, was proven by these 5 types of suffering. If you don't believe in spirit and you just believe in matter, then you're in ignorance. You'll accept a false ego. By accepting a false ego, you'll become attached. By becoming attached, you'll accept hatred. And by accepting hatred, you'll cling to material enjoyment, which means you'll invariably commit violence against someone else for your own happiness. So in other words, ignorance is the root of evil, because evil manifests due to bodily attachment, and too much bodily attachment, basically. In Bhakti-yoga, we don't, as grihastas, or we don't throw it off completely, but we regulate it, and we make the focus of our lives transcendental, as to not, grossly involve ourselves with ignorance. So anyway, let's move on. Shubha, or auspiciousness, Shubha or auspiciousness consists of such qualities as disinterest in material affairs, interest in the Supreme Lord, friendliness, mercy, forgiveness, truthfulness, simplicity, equanimity, fortitude, gravity, respectfulness, humility, and being pleasing to all. So here's a verse, quote, devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from all other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.42. Unquote. By this verse, one should understand that the two symptoms, destruction of ignorance and appearance of good qualities, occur simultaneously. As there is some difference in the rate of unfurling of two leaves, there is a distinction in the pace of the disappearance of undesirable qualities, ashubha, and the appearance of auspicious qualities, shubha. Thus, bhakti develops by specific gradual stages. Though very subtle and difficult to note, the wise have determined these stages by scrutiny of the various symptoms. First, the aspiring devotee develops sraddha, or faith. Sraddha means to have firm trust in the scriptures dealing with bhakti. It also means to have a genuine desire to enthusiastically follow the activities, sadhana, described in those scriptures. These two types of faith may be either spontaneous or aroused by the forceful preaching of another. However it develops, faith leads him to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Guru, and to inquire from him about proper conduct. By following his instructions, that person obtains the good fortune of relations with affectionate, like-minded devotees and the association of realized devotees. So the Guru is supposed to instruct you in proper behavior and proper conduct. And then by following those instructions, you'll become elevated, and then you'll be able to know how to interact and live within the society of devotees. That's Sadhu-sanga. So next comes bhajana kriya. He begins to practice different types of devotional activities. This also is of two types: unsteady, anishta, and steady, nishta. Nishtita. No. 6 different stages mark the progression of unsteady devotional service: false confidence, utsahamai, sporadic endeavor, ganatarla, indecision, vyudhana vikalpa, struggle with the senses, vishaya sangara, inability to uphold vows, niyamakshama, and enjoying the facilities offered by bhakti, taranga ragini. And these are all progressive. One will go from the first stage to the second stage to the third stage, and on as they get over each hurdle, you'll come to the next stage. So the first one, utsahamai, basically what we would call pure devotee syndrome. A Brahmana child, having just begun study of the scriptures, thinks he has immediately become a learned scholar worthy of everyone's praise. Similarly, a person just beginning devotional service may have the audacity to think that he has mastered everything. This is called utsahamai, or filled, puffed up with enthusiasm. So the next one, gana tarala. The same child at times diligently engages in his studies, and yet at other times, due to inability to understand the scriptures or lack of real taste, is negligent. In the same way, a new devotee will sometimes practice the different forms of devotional service and at other times neglect them. Being sometimes diligent and at other times negligent, his endeavor is called ganatarla, condensed dilute, thick, thin. So sometimes you're into it, sometimes you're not. So then the next one, Vyuta Vikalpa. This is indecision. Quote, shall I spend my life happily in family life, making my wife and children Krishna conscious and worshipping the Lord? Or should I give them up and go to Vrindavan to perfect myself by engaging full-time in hearing and chanting with no distractions? Shall I wait till the last stage after enjoying all sorts of pleasures, and I've finally understood that the whole material world is simply a forest fire of affliction? Or is it better that I renounce right now? Consider these verses. Quote, association with women is the way to death, like a blind well covered by grass. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-40. Next verse, quote, those attachments that are very difficult to give up, beautiful wife, obedient sons, devoted friends, vast empire, everything the heart desires, Maharaj Bharat gave them up like stool, even in his youth, due to his attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Uttama Shloka, Bhagavatam 5:14-43. Should I thus give up unreliable family life while still young? On the other hand, it is not proper to renounce immediately. Shouldn't I wait till the death of my old parents before renouncing? Here's a verse. Quote, alas, my parents are old, and my wife is with a mere infant in her arms, and another young children. Without me, they will have no protection and will suffer unbearably. How will they live without me? Bhagavatam 11:17-57. Besides, if one gives up family life in an unsurfeited state, his mind will constantly dwell on family life even after renouncing. Quote, being unsatisfied and always thinking of his family members, he dies and enters the darkest of ignorance. Unquote. Bhagavatam 11:17-58. By such statements of the Lord, I can see that I don't have the strength for renunciation. So for the time being, I'll just work to keep my body alive. Later, after satisfying my desires, I'll enter Vrindavan and engage in worship of the Lord 24 hours a day. After all, the scriptures point out, quote, Jnana and Vairagya are not beneficial in the practice of devotional service, unquote. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:20-31. According to this verse, renunciation is a fault for the culture of bhakti. If it arises from bhakti itself, however, that renunciation is not a fault but an effect, anubhava of bhakti, and subordinate to it. Of course, there is the logic. Quote, in whatever ashram a sannyasi stayed, he always got more than enough to eat. Quote, unquote. In the life of renunciation, there is no worry for maintenance, so maybe I should renounce. But on the other hand, you can see this person is mental. Quote, my dear Lord, until people become your devotees, their material attachments remain thieves, their homes remain prisons, and their affectionate feelings for their family members remain foot shackles. Unquote. That's a serious devotee right there. Household life is a prison only for those who are attached. For a devotee, there is no harm in household life. Thus shall I remain at home and engaged in chanting, or rather in hearing, or shall I engage in service? Rather, as Ambarish Maharaj remained in household life and performed all the angas of bhakti, I shall do likewise. Unquote. In this way, the mind spends time vacillating between the life of renunciation and household life, considering the different options. This is called Vyuta Vikalpa, or extensive speculation. Okay, next one, Vishaya Sangara. Let's see here. Struggle with the senses. So we started with false confidence, or too much enthusiasm, puffed up with enthusiasm. If you get over that, then you have sporadic endeavor, sometimes doing it, sometimes not. And if you're ready to get into it, to do it, then you're not sure, well, should I be grihasta, should I renounce? I want to get into devotional service, but where's the best ashram? And you figure that out, then you try to engage in devotional service, you'll have a struggle with the senses, which is Vishaya Sangara. So it starts off with a verse here, quote, "One whose heart is absorbed in materialism is far from obtaining devotion to Vishnu. Can a man by going east obtain something that is in the west? Probably not." Unquote. Seeing that material enjoyment is forcibly carrying him away and impairing his steadiness in serving Krishna, the devotee resolves to renounce his addictions and to take shelter of the holy name. But many times his attempts at renunciation often end in enjoying what he's trying to renounce. Such a person is exemplified in the Bhagavatam. Quote, "Having awakened faith in topics about me, my devotee is disgusted with all material activities, knowing that sense gratification leads to misery. Still, though he tries, he is unable to give up his material desires and sometimes engages in the same sense enjoyment that brings him only misery. But repenting such activities, he should worship me with love, faith, and firm conviction." Unquote. That's the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 20, Text 27 and 28. This ongoing battle with his desires for sense enjoyment from former habit, where he sometimes meets with victory and sometimes with defeat, is called Vishaya Sangara, or struggle with sense pleasure. The next one, Niyamakshama, is what? Niyamakshama. Inability to uphold vows. So you get over, the struggle for sense gratification, but then you want to do more in devotional service. You want to increase your devotional service. That becomes a struggle. Then the devotee will resolve, quote, "From today I will chant such and such number of rounds of japa and will pay so many obeisances. I will also perform services for the devotees. I won't talk about anything except the Lord, and I'll give up all association with people who talk gossip." Unquote. Though the devotee makes such resolutions every day, he is not always able to carry them out. This is called niyamakshama, or inability to follow rules. Vishaya Sangara is the inability to give up sense enjoyment, while niyamakshama is the inability to improve his devotional service. So then the last one is after you've done all these things and you're able to improve your devotional service, you're starting to become successful in devotional service. This is the last thing that will get in your way. Taranga-rangini. Finally, it is well known that the very nature of bhakti is to be attractive. Thus many people become attracted to the devotee, the abode of bhakti. And, as the old adage goes, by the public's attraction one becomes wealthy. Unquote. Bhakti produces much opportunity for material gain, worship, and position, labdha, puja, pratishta. These are weeds around the creeper of bhakti. Seeking one's pleasure, ranga, amidst these weed-like facilities, which are but small waves, taranga, and the ocean of bhakti, is called taranga-ragini, delighting in material facilities. So thus ends the second shower of nectar of Madhuraya Kadambini by Mahamohapadhyaya Srimad Vishvanatha Cakravarti, entitled Steps of Bhakti from Sraddha to Sadhu-sanga to Bhajana Kriya and Divisions of Bhajana Kriya. So then next time, I guess Monday, we'll read the third shower of nectar, which is mitigation of inauspicious elements. This is anartha nivriti. So if one is steady in bhakti, then gradually the anarthas. Well, if one is able to improve their devotional service and is not taking any material facilities, then there's these different anarthas will go away. And the anarthas here are specifically in relationship to most of them are in relationship to the 10 offenses that can be committed. But there's more to it. There's a lot more to it. A lot of details. A lot of wonderful, wonderful details by Srila Vishvanatha Cakravarti Thakura. So I'll stop there. If people have anything that they want to share, or about the reading that they were inspired by, or they liked, or what have you, I would love to hear it. I'll go over to to Discord for a little bit. And if people want to join me over there and say something or ask a question, here's the link on the YouTube chat. You can meet me there, and whoever else might show up, and we can discuss a little bit more, just share, or not, as you like. So next week, third one, maybe the fourth one. These chapters aren't that long, so try to do at least an hour of reading each time. Third chapter's pretty long. It'll probably be one reading. Well, fourth chapter's really short though, so at any rate, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this reading of this wonderful book, and I will see everyone next time. Hare Krishna.